Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Elixir webinar. Today we'll have Peter Bellman from Elixir Germany, from the German Network for Bioinformatics Infrastructure, and Michal Procházka from Masaryk University, part of Elixir Czech Republic. And they will talk about the integration of deNBI Cloud with Elixir authentication and authorization infrastructure. The webinar will take about 30 minutes, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions. Just last thing before I give the floor to Peter and Michal, the webinar is being recorded, and then the slides and the video recordings will be available on the Elixir website. I will then post a link where you will be able to find the video and the slides. And now I will give the floor to Peter and Michal.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. We have divided our slides into 5 parts. So I will begin with an introduction to deNBI, deNBI Cloud, and deNBI Cloud Portal. Then I will go on to the motivation we had to integrate with AI. And after that, Michal will introduce the concept of Elixir AI. And finally, I will provide information on how we currently integrate with AI, which is currently in beta status. And I will show you a short demo of the Cloud Portal and the OpenStack dashboard of one of our compute centers. So deNBI stands for the German Network for Bioinformatics Infrastructure. It is supported by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research. deNBI runs the Elixir node since 2016. In deNBI, we are providing comprehensive bioinformatics services to users in basic and applied life sciences research. We also give bioinformatics training in Germany and Europe through a wide range of workshops and courses. Of course, we also offer computational resources with the deNBI Cloud. So the deNBI Cloud started in 2016 and represents a federated cloud, a federated infrastructure. It consists out of 5 compute centers: Bielefeld, Gießen, Heidelberg, Tübingen, and Freiburg. They are all based on OpenStack, which is an infrastructure as a service system. And in total, we offer more than 10,000 cores, more than 5 petabytes of storage capacity, and 100 terabytes of RAM. So with these resources, we try to solve the following main use cases. We offer resources for big data analysis, like local access to public data resources or Hadoop and Spark-based solutions for big data analysis. We also want to provide pre-configured VMs with fully established software packages. We also offer specialized hardware like GPU nodes, which is especially used for machine learning. And furthermore, we offer an easy setup for large distributed workflows and research environments like Galaxy and Jupyter notebooks. So in order to allow an easy access to these resources and technologies, we are working on a portal which acts as a central access point to the deNBI Cloud for our users. And in the context of Elixir AI, I will focus on this. So in the context of this presentation, I will focus on 3 main features, namely the management of projects and project members, and the access to the portal and OpenStack. So OpenStack is this infrastructure as a service system that is used throughout in deNBI. So on the next slide is the typical user workflow of a deNBI cloud user depicted. So in general, the idea is that the principal investigator of a German university or research facility logs into the portal and applies for a cloud project by first accessing this portal and submitting an application. So this application then is checked by a committee, and once it is approved, the PI and also any other member can access OpenStack and start working in the cloud. So this might sound or maybe looks easy, but from a technical perspective, it is actually quite difficult to implement and especially to automate this procedure. The implementation of this workflow really was and partially still is a challenge for us. And in my next slides, I'm going to show you why it is difficult. So the first challenge appears by the simple fact that we do not have just one user who accesses the cloud, but we have different user roles. And this imposes the problem of authorization. So we have, for example, a committee who decides which projects should actually run in the cloud. We have an administrator who maintains the compute center. We have a project responsible, so a principal investigator who applies for a project and also who can add and remove project members, and who's responsible for all actions in the cloud. And finally, the project member who works in the cloud project. So we ask ourselves, how do we implement those user roles in the deNBI cloud? Now, these users with these 4 different roles want to access the cloud portal, but also OpenStack. So we had to provide accounts for those different user roles. We asked ourselves if we should create new ones in every compute center, but then we had to provide passwords to those users, which is maybe not the most comfortable solution for a user. And we also had to administer those accounts. For example, we have to check if the principal investigator who applies for a project is actually working in a German university or research facility. Another challenge is that there is not one compute center, but there are 5 compute centers. So we had to coordinate those compute centers and also, for example, synchronize the projects which are registered in a web portal with one of those compute centers, which means that project members in portal should be synchronized with one of those centers or with multiple ones. Furthermore, our compute centers have different versions of OpenStack, which makes this even more complex. And finally, we must set quotas for the corresponding project. Depending on which resources the user applied for and which resources were actually approved by the committee, quotas like RAM and CPU must be set in an OpenStack project. And this is something that we are still working on. So, of course, we could solve those 4 challenges by providing our own implementation, but we decided not to because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Instead, we decided to use Elixir AAI, which Michael will present in the next slides.
Hi everyone. Peter, if you can give me the present right so I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, very shortly, because this presentation is mostly about the deNBI integration, it's not just about Elixir AI, so this will be just a very short description Generally, the Elixir AAI is a set of services which are allowing the railing parties like services like deNBI to offload the authentication of the users and optionally the authorization. So the Elixir AAI, one of the biggest services which is provided for the services is that it provides the user registration. It takes care about the user registration, takes care about the user account management, and takes care about the group and attributes management. So groups, you can somehow organize users to the groups within the Elixir AAI, and you can also assign the attributes to the users, to the groups, to the relationship between, for example, user in the group and so on. This feature is quite heavily used by the deNBI, so deNBI is storing some kind of their information in the Elixir AAI, and these attributes can be seen just by the deNBI and can be managed by the people from deNBI. And then they have the one interface how they can manage and access those information. So here's the diagram how the user actually gets into the service and what components and data flows are in place. So when the user would like to access your service, which is the green box, then it needs to go through the component so-called proxy IDP, where the user needs to be authenticated. The authentication actually in Elixir is also delegated to your home organization, to the user's home organization or some social provider. So we are not storing any kind of passwords. We do not need to manage those passwords, any kind of credentials. We simply delegate that work to somebody else. Then we are just notified that the user has been properly authenticated. The user can go directly to the service, and the service will receive some kind of attributes, which means, for example, name, email, set of group memberships, and the identifier. These informations are get from the parent system, which is the main component for user group and resource management. So they can be fetched by the proxy IDP. But there are some other ways how you can get those attributes, additional attributes. For example, deNBI is using another two ways how to get the attributes. The first one is attributes by the OIDC, which is the OpenID Connect protocol. So they are actually fetching the information from the parent system about the users. And they also using the parent push mechanism, so parent actively push the data about the users to the service. This kind of mechanism is very useful for services which needs to know about the users in advance, or the service needs to know about the changes of the user data. For example, if the user left the project or if the user changed an email address, but he didn't log into the service, and the service needs to know about those changes. So this slide is just an information on how other services can connect to the Elixir AAI, and actually deNBI needed to went through this project as well. So first of all, we need to select the technology which we will use for authenticating the users or communicating with the Elixir AAI. Currently, we are providing two technologies, SAML2 and OIDC. Then you need
Michal, sorry to interrupt you. Could you please speak a little bit louder? I think that the audio is not the loudest one.
Okay. Let's try to raise the volume. Give me a second. Is it better now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Sorry for that. So then when you select the technology and you start to do some implementation on your side, then you just notify us via ai-contact@elixir.org email that you would like to connect. You will receive the link for the registration form, which is some kind of bureaucracy, but we need to know basic information about your service, which is the description, technical details, where are the endpoints, what are your certificates, what is your host name, what kind of user attributes your service requires, if it's just an identifier or you need some other attributes from Elixir AAI. And the form also contains fields where you can put your administrative approval, so that if your service is from some Elixir node or if it's from outside, then it needs to be approved by Elixir Hub. Then we can go into the test the authentication. So we are in test environment, test the authentication, and finally, if everything is okay, we can move into the production, and then it will be listed on the list of services. The Elixir AAI provides the user and group management, I said before, and deNBI is using this quite heavily. So the users are organized in top level. We call it virtual organizations. So deNBI has its own virtual organization, so they can manage their users by themselves. They do not need to ask us to do any kind of changes. They also can divide users into the groups and subgroups as they wish, and these informations are then available for their services, for the deNBI cloud centers. The virtual organization and groups can have its own administrator, so we can delegate the rights for managing those users to somebody else. So it's the delegation is supported. And you can also have your own user registration, so which means that you can define your application form where you can ask users for some additional information, why they, for example, why they would like to use the deNBI cloud and so on. And you can also put those registration forms on top of the groups, so you can even ask for more detailed information. The other thing which is used by the deNBI from the Elixir AAI is the provisioning and deprovisioning, which is actually the Perun push mechanism. So Perun notifies the cloud centers about changes in the user attributes. I think that Peter will talk about it in more detail after me, but generally the Perun can prepare the authorization data, which is just a set of information about the user, and push it to the service whenever there is any change in this set of the data. This feature is also very useful for services which need to support the provisioning, which means that when the user left the project, then you, for example, would like to stop the virtual machines which belong to that user, or delete the data, or whatever you want. For getting data from Perun, you can also use the Perun API. So then you can actively ask that system for the information about the users, group attributes, and so on. There is also the authorization on top of it, so you cannot get information about all the users, but only about your users and only about informations which have the proper rights. So here's the link for the documentation where you can see the whole Perun API, which can be used by your services to talk to. It's a simple HTTP REST-like interface, so there is no need to have some native client to talk to the Perun interface. And now I am giving the word back to the Peter. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So based on these concepts and technologies that Michael described, our portal is using this OpenID Connect plugin to allow a user to reuse his home institution credentials to access the portal, which is of course quite comfortable because he does not have to create any new password. Moreover, a user can only access any deNBI compute center if he is part of the deNBI virtual organization. And this fact that a user must be part of the deNBI virtual organization is a very useful administration feature. It allows us to enforce the user to accept to our usage policy if he wants to use our service, of course. So all in all, OpenID with Elixir solves our authentication problem for the portal access, but it also solves the authorization. OpenID Connect allows our portal to use a token that is specific for a user to access Perun. So I think this is something that Michael already described, to retrieve specific information based on the user role in Perun. And so this access token allows us to use Perun as a database. As Michael already mentioned, we are using Perun actually like a database. So we are setting and retrieving attributes like RAM and CPU restrictions, which are specific for a certain project. So since this token inherits the permissions of a user in Perun, we can reuse different views on the data. For example, a principal investigator is able to add or remove members in his project. And the VO manager can define resource restrictions and provide an overview of existing users and projects. Now, the question is, how do we get this information to OpenStack? So Michael already mentioned Perun propagation system, and this. So what happens here is that Perun propagates this information to OpenStack, and we have a Python-based library that translates this information, which is actually just a JSON, to Keystone. So to this OpenStack database, user account database. And thereby the Elixir ID is set into Keystone, and finally the user is able to access OpenStack. So the next step is now that I show you a short demo of our portal. So I will log into it as a VO manager, so as a virtual organization manager. So I will see more than a normal user would see. And I will apply for a project and approve it because I'm the VO manager. And finally, I will access OpenStack. So I will try to share my browser with you. Okay, so I hope you can see it. Go to the portal page. So this is landing page of our portal. It provides basic information on what deNBI Cloud is, and gives you specific information about the different compute centers. So if you click here, you can read more about it. We also have a getting started page where you get instructions for how to apply for computational resources, how do you actually access the cloud. So in the case of accessing the cloud, you have to do 2 steps. So in the first step, you register for an Elixir account and apply for membership in this deNBI virtual organization. And in the second step, you just go to the portal actually. So I will click on this login button. And the first thing is that Elixir asked me to authenticate with any identity provider where I have already an account. So I can search for example, for any university, so like Bielefeld, for example, right? But I can also use Google. So this is an account of a different user. Wait. Okay, that is unexpected. Let me try again. Now it works. So again, this project is in beta status still, so errors might happen. So on the first page in this portal, you see the basic information that you as a user, as an Elixir user, already provided upon registration. So like your full name, the user ID, the member ID, your Elixir login name, and yeah, the Elixir ID. So Again, as a VO manager, I see here more tabs than what you would see. So I would, if I would be a principal investigator, I would first apply for a project. So I will fill in the application form. This, so I have to provide a lifetime for this project. So data like cores per VM, RAM. You can also apply for a special hardware, and you provide your institution name. Yes, and then I submit this application. So the portal tells me that this application was submitted successfully. So what I see now is that, so I see now my application here. It tells me the status is at the moment submitted. So I, as a VO manager, see here many more other applications for a deNBI cloud project. And I see also my own application here. So when I click here on approve and create, of course it updates my own database in the portal, but it also creates a group in Perun, and this group is directly synchronized with the compute center, which I provide here. At the moment, just Bielefeld is directly connected to Perun, but in a few weeks there will be also other compute centers connected. So when I choose here Perun and click on approve and create, it tells me, okay, so this project was created. So any information here is also provided by mail to the user. So when I approve an application, it sends actually a mail to the user. Okay, your application has been approved. Congratulations, and now you can start working. And if the user then logs in the portal again and clicks on project overview, he can see here his projects so far that are already running. So in my case, I tested before this webinar. I created another project and other applications, and it also provides the login URL to OpenStack. So in this case, it's OpenStack installation in Bielefeld. When I go here, so there are different ways to authenticate with OpenStack. So the basic installation is Keystone, using Keystone credentials, but we implemented or added Shibboleth to OpenStack, and that way we can use a different kind of authentication system. So when I choose here Elixir and click on Connect, it redirects me to Elixir and asks me, okay, so you are releasing personal information. So in this case, I don't want that it remembers it. And when I click on yes, continue, it tells me, okay, so I'm now logged in OpenStack. As I showed you here, I created 3 different projects already. So it might take time. So for the application that I just sent, it might take time until it is created in OpenStack. But I can see here in what kind of projects I am already added. So in this case, it's this before webinar test, which you can see here, and the web test. So when I try to reload the page, it might already be included. Yes, so now it's already here. So this is actually the project application I sent. Then it was approved, and now it is as a project available in OpenStack. So now I can go here and, for example, start a virtual machine. Well, so that's actually what I wanted to show you. So yes, so that was my demo. So this is still in beta, and we of course have our first projects, but we know that there's still a lot of work to do. Of course, we want to serialize this project quota information that I talked about in one of my slides. We want to serialize this information from parent with OpenStack. We are also interested in integrating Elixir's dataset permissions API, but we simply had not the time to look into it, but I guess we will do so in the next weeks. So user accounting is something that we are still working on, and of course we want to do a final release of this portal. So Michal, you have another slide here.
Okay, before you start to ask the questions, I'd like to invite you to the Elixir AI training, which will be on 24 to 25 April. It will be located in Munich Airport Marriott Hotel in Germany, and it will be oriented on service provider who would like to connect to the Elixir AI. And we will be more mainly focused on the OIDC service providers, and the training includes a hands-on session where you can actually integrate your OIDC service provider into the Elixir AI. So if you are interested, have a look at the meeting agenda and potentially the registration, which is on this link, and it's available as the event on the Elixir Europe website.